The worst phone call of my life came from a stranger who thought I was someone else. I was leaving work when my phone rang. A woman asked if I was Daniel Mercer. I said yes. She told me there had been an accident involving my brother. I don't have a brother. I nearly hung up. Then she gave me a name I recognized immediately. My father. He had died 3 years earlier. I asked what she was talking about. She said my father had been listed as an emergency contact for a man who had been brought into hospital after a serious road accident. The man was 41. I was 34. And according to the hospital, he was my father's son. I thought it had to be some administrative mistake. I went to the hospital anyway. A man was lying unconscious in intensive care. I had never seen him before. But when I walked into the room, I knew exactly who he was. He had my father's eyes, the same crooked smile, even the tiny scar above his eyebrow that I'd spent my childhood staring at. I stood beside his bed feeling like I'd walked into somebody else's life. A nurse asked if I was family. I said, I think I am. That was the beginning of the worst week of my life. The man eventually woke up. His name was Marcus. The first thing he asked was whether my father had been contacted. I told him my father was dead. Marcus went completely silent. Then he started crying. He said he'd been trying to find my father for almost 20 years. I asked why. He told me my father had promised his mother that he would never contact her again. I knew my father's history wasn't perfect. I'd heard vague stories about a relationship before my parents married, but he'd always described it as something brief that ended before he met my mother. Marcus said that wasn't true. His mother had been pregnant when my father left. She had raised Marcus alone. He had spent his entire childhood believing his father simply didn't want him. Then, when Marcus turned 21, his mother finally told him the man's name, my father's name. I couldn't breathe. I called my mother. She answered immediately. I asked her if she knew Marcus. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Where are you?" That wasn't the answer I wanted. I told her about the hospital. She started crying. She admitted she'd known about Marcus for decades. My father had told her before they married, but there was more. Marcus wasn't my half-brother. He was my full brother. My mother had given birth to twins, me and Marcus. I was stunned. She explained that Marcus had been born with serious medical problems and spent weeks in hospital. My parents were young, broke, and terrified. My father had arranged for another family to adopt him. They were told the adoption would be permanent and confidential. My mother agreed. Then, years later, she changed her mind. My father refused to search for him. They fought about it. Eventually, they stayed together and raised me. I had grown up believing I was an only child. Marcus had grown up believing he had been abandoned. Neither of us knew the other existed. But there was one detail my mother hadn't told me. The adoption hadn't been permanent. Marcus's adoptive parents had died when he was 19. He had spent years searching for our father. He'd found old paperwork, letters, addresses. He had even gone to my father's house. My father never answered the door. My mother admitted she'd been there that day. She had watched Marcus from inside the house. She had recognized him immediately, and she had still let him leave. I couldn't understand how a parent could do that. Then Marcus told me something that made everything worse. He hadn't been in the accident randomly. He had been driving to meet my father. He'd finally found an old address and was going there to confront him. My father had died before Marcus arrived. Marcus never got his answers. Instead, he woke up in a hospital and discovered that his missing brother was sitting beside him. For weeks, neither of us knew what to do with the other. We were strangers carrying the same childhood in completely different ways. Marcus was angry. I was angry too. But eventually, we stopped asking why our parents had done what they did. There were no good answers. There was only the life we had missed. Last month, Marcus moved into an apartment 5 minutes from mine. We're still getting used to calling each other brothers. Sometimes we sit in silence, sometimes we compare childhood photographs, and sometimes we laugh at how much we look alike. I used to think finding a family member meant gaining something. Now I understand it can also mean discovering exactly what was